Welcome to Romans chapter 13, where we talk about the government and love. Some very interesting combination of topics, but the very first verse says, "Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God," which shows that the government acts as a servant of the Lord. In this passage from verses 1 to 7, Paul says somewhere along the lines that the government acts as a servant of justice on behalf of the Lord. If you think about it, the police is there to serve and protect. I've been watching The Rookie quite a lot, so that was one of the first things I thought of when I read this chapter again and when we studied it on Tuesday night, is that when there's crime happening, the police has to respond and bring justice. And it is like that across the world, where crime happens and the police has to respond and serve and protect and bring justice. If somebody steals something, or there's tax fraud, or there's murder, or there's something that's illegal, there must be justice. There are consequences, because the Lord gave us free will and He doesn't force Himself down upon anyone. But unfortunately, we live in a broken world where we can so easily choose to do something that is wrong, and those sins do have consequences, including stealing or murder and so forth. Obviously, those things can land you in prison. And he says that you should obey the law, not just to avoid the punishment of being thrown in prison, for example, but to have a clear conscience, to have a skoon gewete. And Afrikaans is to know that I'm doing the right thing. Even if nobody else is watching, you're driving the speed limit. And the reason why there are those laws is to have order in your country. Because if you can do whatever you want, there would be nothing that is fair. Everybody can drive like they want to. Everybody would drive drunk, or whatever the case may be. It's a very controversial topic, but there has to be order, and that's why there are governing authorities. And Paul hammers the point that it's important to pay your taxes, and to pay revenue, and to pay respect, and to pay whatever you owe people. And there's this question about what if the government is corrupt. And the problem is that even though God intended it to be a good thing for governments to rule a country, we can unfortunately have governments that abuse that authority. Even if you are in ministry, you can abuse the authority of being a pastor. You can abuse the authority of being a father or a mother. You can abuse the authority of being a friend. So God puts us in leadership positions, but we can easily be selfish with it. And that is the warning that I would like to communicate. Whether you are working for the government, or you're a friend, or you're a parent, or you're a teacher, don't abuse the authority that God gave you. In this case, with the government, they act as servants of justice on behalf of the Lord. And the question is, what about corrupt governments? Unfortunately, that is wrong. That is also illegal. And these things unfortunately happen every day. And in South Africa, things are not always perfect. Overseas, things are not always perfect. And there's a lot of things that are probably happening that I have no idea about. But unfortunately, every day there's a chance of corruption taking place. And it's really sad to see that people can get greedy and they take more than their share. And that's unfair, and that's stealing. And then the question is, why should I pay tax to a government if they are going to take so much and I can't even use all of the money I actually work for, and then I still have other expenses to get to? It doesn't seem fair. But even though I can't answer that question, the point Paul is making is that it's important to pay your taxes, because it is a way of obedience towards the Lord, by being obedient to the government, following the laws and not breaking the laws, and respecting the government, paying the taxes, because part of being a Christian is to be responsible with your money, to know where your spendings are going and coming, what are your incomes, what are your outcomes, and your expenses, and of course tax, value-added tax, and so forth. It's important to make sure that those things are paid. And I know there are some things you don't have to pay tax on. I don't know everything about that. But for the things that have to be paid tax for, that is important to pay. And it just remains the fact that when you owe somebody money, you pay it. You don't procrastinate on it. You don't make excuses. You respect that person because that person did something for you and you're paying them back. Whatever the agreement is, stick to the agreement of paying the person back, because the only thing that we are never to be completely finished paying back is to respect each other, which is actually later in the chapter, which I will see. Where does it say that? I can't remember where it says that, but it does say in one of the translations that the only thing, here it is. Let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. Verse 8. This shows that love fulfills the law. If you love your neighbor, if you love the people around you, you won't murder them. You won't steal from them. You won't lie to them. And therefore, love is the complete fulfillment of the law. When you love, when you do not show jealousy, when you do not commit murder, and so forth, when you do not steal, as it says in verse 9, you show love. And when you love, you fulfill the entire law. And then the last part, verses 11 to 14, as this is a very short chapter, talks about the day is near. And do this, understanding the present time. The hour has already come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The night is nearly over, the day is almost here. So let us put aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. Let us behave decently as in the daytime, not in carousing and drunkenness, not in sexual morality and debauchery, not in dissension and jealousy. Rather, clothe yourself with the Lord Jesus Christ, and do not think about how to gratify the desires of the flesh. This talks about that the time for Jesus' second coming is coming closer and closer and closer. And Paul apparently in his time believed that Jesus will come back in his time. He says that it's even closer than when we first believed. And about 2,000 years later, Jesus is not back yet, but every second it comes closer and closer to Jesus' second coming. For the Lord, 1,000 years is like a day, and a day is like 1,000 years. So for us, it's been 2,000 years since Jesus ascended back, and for him it's like 2 days. So in the Lord's timing, he will return to come and take his bride back, and then Revelation will play out. But this just shows that we should be awake like a guard on a watchtower, which I believe Mark 13 also talks about, and other passages in the Gospels. If I have it correct, I'll just put it here. And Jesus makes the statement that you must be awake and ready for when the Master comes back, and it's at the time when you least expect it. So Paul is showing how important it is to respect authority, the government, is to love each other. That is fulfilling the entire law, and then to know that the time is near. So it's some really important topics in just one very short chapter of 14 verses. And he encourages us not to live like the world. And that you can take back to Romans 12, verse 1 and 2, where it says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by renewing of your mind. And then you put off the things like carousing, drunkenness, sexual morality, dissension, jealousy, and so forth. And he says that you take off the clothes of sin, leave it in darkness where it belongs, and then you put on the clothes of Jesus Christ, which is the armor of God, or the armor of light. And Ephesians 6, verses 10 to 18 specifically talks about the shield and the sword and the breastplate of righteousness and the helmet of salvation and the belt and the sandals and everything. And I believe when we accept the Lord Jesus Christ, we carry that armor permanently. We always have it on. Somebody in the group explained it like Iron Man, who has that arc reactor, he double taps it, and the nanobots immediately make up the suit, and he always has his armor with him. And so it is with us as Christians. We always have that armor with us as the armor of light. And we are fighting the good fight. We're fighting a spiritual fight, fighting from victory. That is Romans 13. Remember to pay your taxes, even if it is difficult. Remember to love, because that fulfills the entire law. And remember, the day is coming closer and closer. May you be ready and awake and accept the Lord Jesus Christ. He is the only way to be saved, by believing in him, that he died for you on the cross. And the day is coming closer and closer. May you put off the clothes of sinfulness and put on the Lord Jesus Christ. For one day, he will be back.